Hey folks, so a viewer recently put a comment on one of my videos asking if I could do a review on used police vehicles and if they're a good buy. And the answer to that is a very, very difficult answer to provide, mainly because different law enforcement agencies have different maintenance cycles and different ways that they treat their vehicles. Generally, your smaller agencies, let's just say agencies with less than 20 patrol vehicles, don't really adhere to the same maintenance schedules that you might see on larger agencies. And I say that because I work specifically with law enforcement agencies quite a bit, and specifically their fleet vehicles. And there's an old saying that if it can be broken, a cop can break it. And I see that all the time. You know, you look at a Panasonic Toughbook CF19 computer, which is arguably one of the strongest computers ever built. It is pure mil-spec. It is a tank of a computer, and I've seen them completely destroyed after being in the hands of a patrol officer for 6 months. Whereas you can deploy these things to Iraq, and they come back still working. And it's not because they're being purposely destroyed, but it's generally because of a rush to action. You're using it, something happens, you leave it on the top of your patrol car, you back over it, it falls off the top, you run over it, things like that happen. Happens to all the equipment that really is attached to or is around a patrol car. Now, that being said, police vehicles are stressed in ways that most non-police vehicles aren't. And I'll give you an example. If you see a police vehicle for sale at auction with 140,000 miles on it, you may think, well, you know, that vehicle has relatively low miles. You buy a Tahoe or you buy some other vehicle, you know, that may not be an excessive number of miles. But the part that you don't see is the engine hours. Many of those vehicles are sitting idling on the side of the road for hours upon hours upon hours, and have a tremendously high number of engine hour utilization on the engine, which is almost as bad as driving miles. And in many cases, they have the equivalent of 300 to 400,000 miles on the engine just because it's been idling so often. The same thing holds true for EMS vehicles, ambulances. So, if you find a really good deal on a Tahoe or on a police interceptor, you know, you're seeing more and more of Crown Vics being decommissioned and up for sale in auctions. It may be worth your time to invest in one of those little scanners that can actually scan the engine hours off of the control module on the vehicle. Only because you might be surprised. Now, that being said, there's several law enforcement agencies that take their budget very seriously, and they try to get the most out of their cars for the longest period of time. So they adhere to a very strict maintenance schedule on their vehicles. I know for a fact, Customs and Border Protection or Border Patrol, they have one of the strictest maintenance schedules on their vehicles. Mainly because their vehicles tend to be off-road, and you may have an agent by himself out in the middle of nowhere for an extended period of time, and the last thing you want is a vehicle broken down on you. You're starting to see a bit of a transition with the types of police vehicles that are out there. You know, you look 10, 15 years ago, all you really saw were Crown Victorias, and now you're seeing more of a mix. A lot of police Tahoes with the police pursuit package or the PPV package. You're seeing a lot of Ford Explorers. It's actually called an Interceptor SUV, and Interceptor Cars, which is a Taurus. And the big difference between those two vehicles is, and what I mean between the Tahoe and the Interceptor SUV or the Ford Explorer, is really the cost and the size. Of course, one's Ford and one's GM, but most law enforcement agencies are going to decide on one or the other based on cost. And the Explorer or the Interceptor SUV generally costs about $7,000 less than a Tahoe. Now, a lot of folks don't realize that buying these vehicles is just the first part of it. In many cases, cities can purchase these vehicles off of a contract that's already been pre-negotiated that gets the vehicle already equipped with about 80% of the gear it needs, from the cage to the overhead light bars, to the strobe lights, the sirens, things like that. And all the agency really has to add to it is the MDT, or the computer, the mobile data terminal. If a police agency is purchasing just the bare bones vehicle, which is the Interceptor package or the PPV package, with no cage, stripped down, and they're having to upfit the vehicle, they may get the SUV or the Ford SUV for $25,000, and they may get the Chevy Tahoe for $31,000. But by the time they upfit that vehicle to where it needs to be ready to be used out in the field, they've generally added an additional $20,000 to $30,000 worth of equipment per vehicle. Of course, some agencies have a much more conservative approach to it, so they may not put a $5,000 mobile data terminal or computer inside their vehicle. They may not put an advanced AVL or GPS tracking system inside that vehicle. They may not opt for cages in all of their cars or certain packages. Sometimes they'll go with the smaller engine. In Ford's case, you can either pick an all-wheel drive or a two-wheel drive. Same with General Motors. So there's all sorts of different options. Believe it or not, even the light bar configuration, going with a Wayland Liberty or Justice light bar, can mean the difference in thousands of dollars per vehicle. And some of these vehicles are lit up like Christmas trees. They put strobe lights all over them. And those lights are extremely expensive, and they're not the little cheap ones that you buy off of Amazon or off of eBay. These lights are generally going to cost anywhere between $50 and $150 per light. And those are those small ones that you see flashing all over them. So another concern is the cost of the camera system. So a lot of times they are going to go with something like a Panasonic Arbitrator, and that's going to be their camera system or DVR recording system for when they pull someone over. They may even have an on-officer camera that links to the vehicle, the radio systems. All of that can easily account for $12,000 to $15,000 worth of gear. If an agency opts to put radar equipment in their vehicles, again, that's several $1,000s added. So by the time everything's said and done, it's not unusual for a traditional patrol car to be equipped and have a total price of anywhere between $50,000 to $60,000, even though the vehicle itself may be half that. So again, the main point of this video, though, is it a good buy? Well, as long as you realize what you're getting into. If you have some basic mechanics knowledge and you can do some work on your vehicles, then it may be a great buy. Most of the times these vehicles sell at auction super cheap. But just keep in mind that if you're expecting to get into a vehicle that is going to last you a long time, just keep in mind that that vehicle's probably been in service, even if you can't tell by looking at the odometer, for an excessive amount of engine idling hours, as well as just wear and tear on the suspension components, the chassis, and the transmission. Many people get into former police vehicles just to find out that the transmission fails on them shortly after, or they have a major component that fails on the engine, or a starter or power steering pump. Things like that just start to go out, simply because these vehicles are really stressed out to the max at times. Anyways, I hope this answers that question. I hope I didn't make it more confusing for you. If I did, I apologize. Anyways, if you like my videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.